Oh, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. We will convene the Project Oversight Committee meeting. It's Friday, December 1st. Apologies to everyone that tried to Zoom in, but we're having technical difficulties. But we will be proceeding with the in-person committee meeting. We have two items on the agenda, the October 2023 monthly progress report, as well as the September 2023 project management oversight consultant report. I will be calling this meeting to order, and for purposes of making quorum, we will be appointing Chair Hanabusa as an ad hoc committee member for this committee meeting. I'll call the agenda. Myself, Kika Bukowski, is present. Vice Chair Michelle Chun Brungraber.
Present.
Anthony Alto.
Present.
Art Tolentino is excused. Ed Sniffen is excused. Robert Yu is excused. Colleen Hanabusa.
Here.
Thank you. So with that, is there anyone from the public that would like to give testimony on any of the agenda items? Seeing none. First item on the agenda, item number 3, October 2023 monthly progress report. Is Nate on his way, or is somebody else going to be giving a?
He's on his way.
Okay. So we will, Lori, do you have anything you want to share on the progress report while we, okay.
There he is.
Okay. Sorry, Nate.
No, I'm sorry.
We're on the progress report.
10-4, I apologize. All right, so we're on the monthly progress report. Nate Meddings, Heart Project Director. I am going to go through the October monthly progress report as I typically do, concentrating on the overall key items, providing what the most recent progress is to those items. This is the October progress report, so it's October data, so it's about a month dated, but it's the most up-to-date information we have. The first key issue, talked about CCUR4 Dillingham and the progress making on that project. Surprisingly, after the first 14 months, NAN continues to show that they can meet their original schedule. The biggest risk to their schedule is CCUR4E, that we'll get into in a second. But the first year, we are performing much better than a lot of us thought. We're able to work around a lot of design conflicts and issues and keep the project moving. That's kudos to both our team and the NAN team to continue to work well together. That project goes into the end of 2025 or maybe first quarter of 2026, and then of course it's drill checked and guideway after that. So this is our critical path. The next item is talking about the procurement of 4E or Dillingham Electrical. We actually opened bids last week on that project. Both bids are right within our estimate. So we opened both bids, which was a big concern given everything that's going on in the high voltage world. But we had two bids that are very close to our estimate, and we're driving to hopefully a notice of award gets executed today or tomorrow. And we'll be able to tell you guys who that is. But that award was the last remaining one to get us to CCGS. So as a project, I don't think we've ever had a executed contract that includes electrical work with completed designs through Dillingham, which is a critical path. So we finally had that, so it's a little bit different environment for the CCGS bidders this time around, but that was a very big contract award, and it set us up for the next 3 years to get out of the way for the guideway. So that's a big next step there. The third bullet talks about core systems, so this is really segment 2. Of course, we had the SPG settlement. We're expecting SPG to be completely wrapped up in end of February next year. And then Hitachi takes over the site, and we are still projecting an opening date in June of 2025. Although the last we're fighting day-to-day delays pretty much every day, a year and a half out. So there is a risk to that date, but everything's tracking to that date right now, June of 2025. The final bullet talks about CCGS procurement. There's been no change in that schedule. We're expecting part 1 very soon, and we think we can get part 2 before the end of the year. So those were the overall key items. They were streamlined. Corey and I will try to beef those up in the future, but happy to address any comments, questions on the overall report. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Members, any questions?
I have one.
Michelle?
Hey, on page 38 starts risk management, and after the FFGA is signed, I know that you guys were talking about potentially starting a risk refresh next year. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the process and the timeline?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, there was a couple big milestones to get over, the FFGA, and then also that award or potential award of CCR 4E actually helped us retire some financial risks.
Right. Yeah.
So that is helpful, but the intent there is now that, we do a risk refresh pretty much almost every year. I think FTA requires it at least every other year. But this risk refresh is trying to look at all the active and remaining work and try to identify as a program what the range is of affordability for CCGS. There's been risks in the world that have increased significantly since we did the recovery plan, things beyond anyone's control, nationwide, worldwide, so those risks have increased. We expect bid prices to increase, but still I'm confident we can award that bid price within the 9.1 total, but we need to do sort of a risk refresh and dig into some of that remaining work on the west side to be able to determine how much we can afford. So in essence, there's a high likelihood that the bid prices will come in over our estimate, so we want to be all on the same page with exactly what we can afford so there's no surprises on bid.
So, when a risk is realized, it's an issue, right? And things beyond our control potentially could be issues, not risks, right? So I think if you start thinking about the risk process in terms of risks that you believe you can control, right, or that have not turned into issues yet, versus risks that you think have been realized because of some factor or whatever and are issues now, I think that distinction could be helpful, especially for world risks that kind of have been out of our control, right? And some of them may or may not be realized. Like, I'm really pleased with the bids coming in for the high voltage work. I think that's really good work on everyone's part, including the bidders understanding what constraints we have, right? And so I want to make sure everybody understands that even though we think something might be a certain way, there's always this probability that, it just doesn't turn out to be that for some market factor or something else or whatever. People just have the capability to perform the work. But as we do, can you talk about the schedule a little bit more, about the risk refresh process and when you might be getting started next year after the FFGA is signed? Yes,
so we've developed a SWAT team, what we're calling it internal, but we've identified a candidate that just built a lot of stations for us, was a role of significance in the STG work. We identified that candidate plus Corey, a scheduler and a cost estimator, to start to drive the concepts on all those remaining projects that are out there. The schedule is pretty tight. We have December and January, and we're probably going to do that risk refresh either the last week of January or the first week of February. So very tight schedule, and it's so basically the FTA will participate. Hopefully PMOC will participate. They can bring in some perspective of what's happening across the nation. And then so that helps us. This is the same exercise that I think a lot of owners are doing right now with active procurements.
Okay.
So I think a 2-month time frame to do the work, hold the meeting, and then it's probably a month or two to wrap
Right.
up those reports,
Right.
et cetera.
Yeah, and I mean, risk is kind of a hard thing because, the program managers never really want to say, oh, yeah, I have this risk and it's going to, we think it's going to be certain things. So there's this push on trying to be realistic and really understand what your risks are, while at the same time, like, don't go overboard. In the end, you guys are going to have to execute it, right? We're going to have to execute this. So we want the risk to be very realistic, not to be too much, not to be too little, just kind of Goldilocks risk, okay? So we've done this many times. It's just that this one is important to me because it's going to impact what the affordability of CCGS.
Which means everything to us.
Which means everything to us, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Anthony?
If you know, Chair, just wondering how we're doing on the staffing situation. It's, Director of Finance has been in a while. Have we got any bites?
Actually, not the problem, but the Director of Finance, we actually haven't advertised it yet, so I think Ricky and I are still working on qualifications. But we haven't advertised for finance yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Oh.
with very little success.
Okay. I'm sorry. You said we have advertised with very little success and very qualified candidates that have come in.
You good?
Yep.
Okay. Chair, you have any questions?
I just have one. So you said that you anticipate CCR 4E to be awarded maybe today or tomorrow or sometime very shortly. After that, is the only major contract left CCGS?
Yes, Chair.
And after we're basically, it's all the way then to Kakaako?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
So Nate, on the CCGS bid, you guys are comfortable with interest as far as?
Yes, very happy with the interest.
Okay, and then kind of dovetailing off of Vice Chair's question, page 39, just so that I'm trying to get my brain accustomed to these colorful charts. So I'm looking at risk 2 on page 39. So if I'm reading this correctly, the scope of work, 4E scope of work, the probability of, if I'm reading this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, the risk of it, maybe we finding, once we go underground, there may be some things that are unknown, so the probability is high, but the impact may be not lower than the impact is medium. Am I reading that?
Yes, sir. So you're looking at the vertical axis there on the left, and that's probability, and you can see risk 2 is very, very high because we almost know it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
But because we have a good process in place to handle those, and we've successfully done that to date, the impact should be low. We know it's going to happen, but we're able to manage it so the impact is lower.
Okay, and then risk 1, similarly, the probability of long lead items being an issue is fairly under control?
Yes, but the impact would be huge. So
yeah.
these are 12 kV conductors where HECO had agreed to supply these and us replenish their supply once our order gets here. This is September data. We weren't able to get the October data in here, but in October you'll see that risk has been either retired or significantly reduced because HECO has confirmed that we are going to get those.
Okay.
So in October that risk has changed. And I think, so the reason CCUR 4E scope risk is so high from a schedule perspective is because it fits within the tail end of the NAN work, and there's a big interface there that we got to manage, and most likely one of those are going to delay each other. So I think from a schedule perspective, the 4E scope's going to be there for a couple years because that is our critical path, and we got to manage that.
Yeah.
You know, the critical steps here are managing NAN CCUR infrastructure work, then getting the 4E guys in to pull all the cables, do the service connections, And then as soon as areas are cleared of utilities, we bring in CCGS contractor and start drilling those shafts. So that's just how tight our schedule is.
So, I mean, how's the situation with manpower on Dillingham? Is it getting better? Is it improving, as far as, manning the shifts as was indicated in the bids?
So the progress to date is as planned. So they're performing, they're putting work in the ground, meeting their schedule, still proving that they can end on time. But they have never, except for the first week or two, provided what they promised us at bid time, and that's 7 days a week, 2 shifts a day. So they're yet to provide that, and we track that every day because that's our get out of jail free card for concurrent delay.
Right, because it would probably be good if we could kind of get a little bit ahead, right?
It would be great if they were able to secure that workforce and get ahead of schedule. Yes. Yeah.
So how successful are we in? Is there? I mean, what's the issue of getting the manpower that was?
Everybody is searching for the same specialized workers, I guess. You know, I think we're hearing it from SDG, HRH, NAN, not Fluccio, but those three that they're having trouble getting new employees and even keeping their employees because work's real good right now, so people are getting enticed to go other places. We've actually asked SDG, is there anything you can do to accelerate work? Same thing with Hitachi, just to try to minimize some of these testing risks. They're having trouble finding crews to crew up, is what they're telling us.
As part of your risk refresh, are you guys looking at potential labor shortages? Because I know that there's going to be some huge competing projects down the pipe. How's that going to impact?
Yeah, that highlights the importance of us coming together with the Navy, because just those and a couple other projects, you basically have a full island-wide resource plan just by staying collaborative with them. But yeah, Kika, that's one of our biggest concerns, is enough workforce to build the job in the time we need it. We haven't seen it yet. I mean, there's been no station that's taken less than 4 years on this project.
Have you guys considered potentially meeting with the contractors to get some kind of forward-thinking labor requirement, you know, a couple of years out, and maybe getting together with the trades to kind of give them a heads up, because I know they're looking to ramp up their apprentice programs and recruit to kind of meet the pending demand. That might be something that you guys might consider to kind of try to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, we could provide like full-time equivalent resource projections from now until the end, like number of skilled labor needed to complete our schedule. And then if you took that by trade even, yeah, by trade, and then if you took that and overlaid the NAVFAC project, that would be the bulk of the labor planning.
You guys might
do that.
Have you guys considered maybe convening a meeting with the building trades and maybe sharing some of that info to kind of give them as much of lead time and working with them, because I'm sure they would love this kind of information.
Yeah, we absolutely should. Because if you look at like specific trades, we could have a 2-3 year lead-in for the critical mass of needing all this work. So you have time to bring people up to speed on this, right?
Right.
So absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
Right, and
Sooner the better.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it gives them incentive to do the apprentice programs at a certain time, because they'll meet the need too, right?
Yeah. And the you know, these projects could probably take an apprentice class right through. So, you know, that might be something we could look at.
Yes, that's critical meeting. That's a
Okay,
great
let me
idea.
know if
Okay. Yep.
sounds good. Any other questions?
I got a question. Oh, go ahead. Is there a way for us to incentivize the trades to do that to kind of like build their skill set up? Is there a way to
I don't think they need
incentivize to do that?
incentive, they just need
the numbers to
know,
figure out
yeah.
how to go. Okay, all right, that's good news. That's good. That's a good point. I'm sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was going to make the same point about reaching out and apprenticeship programs. I'm just wondering if we could bring in the states as well, maybe DOE, because, you know, there
Right,
are
the
kids that
community
we-
colleges.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think there are ongoing efforts between the trades and DOE, and there's a lot of good jobs Hawaii trying to stimulate that pipeline. So it's in the works. I think the thing that we need is just the communication as to how many people do we need, and to kind of, you know, not just a one-off, but stay engaged with the trade, so that, you know, maybe you guys can help set up job fairs, you know, coordinated job fairs, set up through HART, collaborating with the trades so that they can bring all their beautiful tents out and have guys come and sign up. That might be something that would be huge. It would benefit everybody, especially the project. Yes, Chair.
Have you guys reached out to DLIR, Department of Labor, and their workforce development programs? Because that's really, with all due respect,
Yep.
right? We're talking about trades, we're talking about union related, but there's a workforce development that's totally neutral in terms of union, non-union, ABC, or whatever you want to say. So there's workforce development. I do know that there's for the shipyard, not the shipyard, but basically for the floating dry docks, and the dry docks is being constructed at Pearl, that they're getting together workforce development teams for them, because I think right now our biggest competition for HART is going to be Pearl. That's why you're meeting with the Navy, and because when they start to move, well, they've already awarded their contract, so they're but they are seeing a sort of like an inability to fulfill their job requirements as well. But they're doing it through workforce development types of programs, both in Pearl as well as the State Department of Labor. So have you looked at them, the State Department of Labor?
I don't think we have, but we will.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's
and,
your, yeah, and your apprenticeship program is HCC, so that's a.
And former board member is DLIR, so that would be helpful.
It's Jay. Jay is the,
Okay, great.
yeah, so talk to Jay.
As long as we make sure we're in compliance with all labor agreements.
Absolutely.
And as long as everybody knows that these are just estimates, right? These are what we think is going to happen, and that's our best estimate at this time. It's not like we're guaranteeing work or anything for anybody.
And it's surprisingly similar work from what I understand about NAVFAC. You know, it's utility relocations and then a lot of prefabricated or segmental concrete and steel. And that's the bulk of our work as well. So you could share those resources. And even on big projects like this, I mean, a crew gets to a point where they stop and have to wait for a few weeks for another crew to catch up. If that crew could go to NAVFAC for those few weeks, it's vice versa, come back to us, if you could share those, that would be big.
I think building trades would be very appreciative of the outreach. Chair.
So, one thing that we haven't talked about is, as you know, Kiewit's, phase one, I call it phase 1 and 2, you call it all segment. You know, they had their own batch plant. And that was, of course, at I think it was in Campbell Industrial Park, where they had their own batch plant. In other words, they were making the concrete and the prefab, the pillars or whatever else, the segments that we needed. So I don't know if that's still operational, but what are you going to do for this last segment? Is it going to still do that? Because I think the reason they started out there was because of the fact that they did have the batch plant. In other words, they manufactured their own concrete out there. So Amaron had a stake in that. And then they really prefabbed all of it. I mean, you must have seen it. I went out there and looked at it. And they prefabbed the pillars and they prefabbed all of the segments of the rail. So what about this segment? Do we have, are they still operating, or do we have another area?
So we are keeping the main precast yard that Hewitt used and STG used. STG's returning it back in agreed to form and fashion, but that does include some of the overhead forms and some of like the overhead cranes in there. Basically, we're paying for the rental because it's a better deal, and we secured long-term lease of that through 2027 or 8 or 9, whenever we projected the needs of
Right.
CCGS. The batch plant, though, I don't think that's something STG used, but I would think, given the amount of concrete going on both those projects, a satellite batch plant would be warranted, certainly.
Because that's what cut a lot of it's, you know, I always said that the manufacturing of concrete really took place in the concrete trucks. As you put all the things together and they mixed it, but it was very time sensitive.
Yeah.
Because at one point, magically the PSI lose.
It's too high.
So that's why I'm wondering how we're gonna do this. I mean, you have more traffic downtown, you have more problems with how you're gonna pour and all of that.
STG doesn't have their own batch plant, right? I think so that they all get from concrete supplier.
Okay, we're running out of concrete because the home builders can't get their concrete until like the afternoon. Nobody gets morning deliveries anymore in town.
Well, we experienced on Coluccio, if you guys remember, that concrete shortage for 6-8 months. They were only allowed 2 loads a day.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's because did one of our major concrete suppliers kind of cut back? Because, you know, isn't it almost all, you guys might know, isn't it almost primarily Amaron now?
And HCD is who I see mostly.
Hawaiian Cement, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're manufacturing as much. Who bought Island Ready Mix? Did Amaron buy Island Ready Mix?
I'm not sure.
Because one of them bought Island Ready Mix too. So the three major, Island Ready Mix isn't as big, but the 3 major ones, so that.
Maybe we
Amaron-
can pursue some kind of legislation to prioritize loads or something, I don't know.
It's actually the rock.
Yeah.
And when we faced this, it was when Pearl Ridge was being built, and we had to bring in clinker.
Maybe we should make sure they're not ripping us off,
We
you
had to bring clinker
know,
in.
price
for- yeah.
fixing and stuff.
Wow.
And we had all kinds of problems.
I,
Because of,
so I could tell you, not off the top of my head, but how many tons or cubic yards of concrete we'll need. And it will amaze a lot of people. And I bet you NAVFAC is triple that.
yeah.
So I agree. I mean, that's a local batch plant.
So now you know why the island's sinking.
Planning is crucial.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, members?
I have one more
Yep.
comment. We talked about risk, and I guess I forgot to say it, but as we go through this, I want to remind everybody, because I know they're not listening today, right? But go remind everybody that it's a chance to look for opportunities, okay? It's a chance for looking for opportunities to reduce risk, to reduce cost, to reduce schedule. People got great ideas. You have a lot on your team that have gone through, you know, this exercise before, and really try to be innovative and think through what opportunities we might have, because it's also a way to bring those things in. We always talk about risk management, but it's opportunity management too. And you guys have a lot of smart ideas. You've implemented them, and we've seen the results in the last, 18, 24 months, and we've got a lot of really good results from you guys being pretty innovative about stuff. So take your pencils out and sharpen them. So thank you
I
for.
like that. Corey, we're going to call it the opportunity refresh, not the risk.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
So
Good
tell
idea.
me, we did Rich Refresh right after the recovery plan, correct?
Yes.
So when you did the risk refresh, which FTA adopted, how do we measure out? In other words, what's the comparison to what you thought was the risk and how it worked itself out?
We could do a comparison of top 10 risks there and
Right.
then top 10 risks now. I guess 80% of them are the same, just different numbers.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, we
that's
can-
what I expect, but
we
I
can
wanted
do
to
that.
know when you predicted, I wanna know how well we predict. That's really what I'm
Okay.
after, but then, because how well we predict is gonna give us an indication of.
How well we're gonna
success.
do, right.
So I expect a risk to not change,
Okay.
but what I wanna know is how we claimed or we
That's good.
said we were gonna address those risks and how did we do? Because that's gonna tell me whether I can look at you and say, hey, don't you think you have to change a little bit here?
That's the
But-
metric of success.
Right,
Success.
exactly.
I agree with you, yeah.
Okay, so if you could think about that and do that, I really appreciate it.
Okay. And then, you know, the approach there, that risk refresh was us trying to like defend our 9.1, right? So it was a little bit different. This risk refresh is going to be an internally run with our risk manager who ran that one, but it's going to be a more friendly environment where FTA, PMOC are helpful in providing those opportunities too and working through that. So a little bit different focus than the last one where we got a little head-to-head there. So very confident we can come up with innovation.
But your risk should be the risk.
That's right.
I mean, you know, even if you're warding off people with one hand, so to speak, the risk should still be the risk.
Yes.
And the risk in the future, what we're going to anticipate, should also be the risk.
Absolutely.
You know, we may not have to waste one hand warding everyone off, but notwithstanding, the bottom line is the bottom line.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Good.
I mean, I just wanted to reiterate this business about the change in the nature of the workforce. That is, I mean, there's a generational shift going on nationwide. The attraction of college is being reduced because a lot of those jobs are going to go to AI, whereas the demand for the kind of work that we're doing is increasing all across the country. Those jobs aren't going to stop when the Navy job's done or HART's done, because we're going to have a lot of work to do to deal with sea level rise and climate change and what have you. Those jobs, there's going to be greater and greater demand, and I'm not sure to what extent the state is out there driving home the message. I mean, we've been talking for years about the cakey brain drain and everybody leaving. The opposite impulse is now starting to come into play, and we need those kids to stay here, and I'm not sure to what extent the state is putting out that message, and it's kind of an important one. So to the extent that we can prod the state a bit to take that issue up, that may be helpful to us.
You have to take advantage of these pioneering, great projects that only come around, you know, every few times in a lifetime in your backyard.
Yeah.
And that's who you want to grow it around.
Oh, one more thing.
Yep.
The Alawai watershed plan has just come out to try to figure out what you're going to do with all the water coming through the Alawai to Waikiki, and that is another construction project. And just have somebody just take a look at it and see how it phases in with us, because when their plan is to put these like walls up the, you know, like walls up the Alawai, and then concrete walls like from Woodlawn down through, you know, the stream and flood the golf course and all kinds of other stuff. So you might want to like see what the phasing of that is, because that's going to use plenty of concrete too. It's going to be another big infrastructure project.
$1 billion there.
Yeah, $1 billion infrastructure project.
Nate, last question, real quick. You know, is there any impact to the project on the reason, positive or negative, on the acquisition of Grace Pacific?
Haven't figured that out yet. I think it could very well have a positive impact on us. It gives NAN the ability to get to their aggregate quicker, and maybe expands the resources as it relates to paving.
Is that, I mean, has Grace done a lot of the repaving on Dillingham, or?
No.
No? Okay.
No, so that would be a new face to the party.
Okay.
I think right now everything's self-performed right now.
Okay. All right.
I'm interested to see those subsidiaries too, like if they all went to NAN or who went to what, because that has impacts on us too.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think it would be, you know, NAN's continuing to deliver Dillingham for us as a good partner. So
Right.
hopefully that just further emphasizes that.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. If that's it for item number 3, let's move on to item number 4, September 2023 Project Management Oversight Consultant Report.
All right, thank you, sir. Again, Nate Meddings here. This is the September PMOC report, or it is, yes, so it is the September data, I think, or no, August data. So it's 2 months behind what I just gave you, but I'll still read the project issues or concerns and then give an update there. So I'm starting on page 5 of 50. Under major concerns, the first one is the FFGA amendment environmental reevaluation. I think you guys are all up to speed on the progress that is. Of course, we thank you guys for the review and approval of that, and hopefully it takes the next steps there and there's no delay in the execution of that. Okay. And then the next one's MCC, identifying some of the key vacancies. Of course, since this report, we have the Director of Project Controls here, who I've been very, very impressed with over the first week. asking really good questions, bringing the team together, and showing them the support that they really need. So I'm really happy to have Corey on board, already taking stuff off Vance's and I's plate. Planning director, we've made some movement on that too. We actually have a candidate that's on site here today. Through Jacobs, a little meet and greet. Hopefully that's successful, and then we can sign him up and move him here. The other ones continue to be vacant. We continue to try to fill those. CCGS procurement is the next summary issue on page 6. CCGS procurement on schedule. Things are progressing. Hopefully we'll get to part 2 before the end of the year. CCR construction, we covered that. The infrastructure schedule is on schedule, and the award of 4E was very big for us. We're all very excited to be able to share those results and the schedule with everybody. That work is still falling within our plan, both cost and schedule, to meet the 9.1 in March 2031. And then that's it for their key issues, and I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Members, questions?
Quick one.
Yes.
We've had a number of vacancies out for a really long time. I think, and maybe you guys have already tried to do it, but it might be time to go and look around and try to steal somebody that you know is good. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's probably time to do that, to look at candidates and encourage candidates to apply, because it's been open for so long. We've had it open for people to come in. So if you know somebody, if anybody knows somebody, go talk to them, right? And a word of mouth recommendation is a good thing. I know that everybody has lots of choices, and these are government positions, and they might not pay great, but lucky you live Hawaii. So you came, and there might be other people that might just want a lifestyle change. So I don't know what to say, except for maybe it's time to go try and steal somebody from someplace.
We have to incentivize people to get there.
Yeah, well, there might be people that are here and someplace else in Honolulu that might want to come, that Lori might know.
Any other questions? Yes, Chair.
So it looks like on the major issues of the PMOC, the first one, FFTAs. So we're down to 2 major issues, the CCGS, CCUR. Going to take care of itself. However, on the number 2, the management capability and capacity issue, one of the things that I'm curious about is that the PMOC identified it in July of this year. It says July 2023, date identified, versus FFGA is September of 2022, which makes sense because that's when the recovery plan was accepted. So why is that particular issue, which has been around for quite a while, only identified as of July 2023? Do you know?
No.
That's the PMOC is saying.
Yeah.
In other words, they weren't concerned until July 2023. The other thing is what you said, the planning director has been here, and then you mentioned Jacobs. Are we using Jacobs to do the planning director?
That is potentially what we would use, yeah.
So we're going to do an HDR person for planning director?
He would be Jacobs.
Oh, he would
this
be
individual,
Jacobs, so
yeah.
we're part of the Jacobs. So are we going to see an amended contract out of Jacobs?
No, their contract's very broad, general engineering consultants, so they are kind of like staff augmentation, but not seconded. So typically they provide an FTE, boots on the ground, 40 hours a week.
Following up on what Michelle said, I guess the reason why that caught my ear is because of the fact that, how many of these positions, and I think we all wanted to see city employees, or at least people here, fill those positions. But if they're gonna start to fill the major positions, backstopping part by using HDR or our consultants, that's another thing. Because when we look at your chart, I guess it's for Laurie's chart about the vacancies and how it's filled, I want to be really clear that we understand when we're not able to fill it, that we're using consultants. Because as you know, that's not the intent. That's not what we wanted to see happen. But looks like you need a planning director. So you can only get it through Jacobs. Let us know that that's what's happening.
Yeah, we're kind of at that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Who's
nobody
that going
wanted to
there?
go there, but you know, you've got to go there. Now's the time to do it because that person can get on board, get trained, understand what's going on with the project before the middle of next year, or you know, the fall of next year. And it's important to get those people on board and really dig into the program now.
That's always our last priority, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's if it's got to, you know, yeah, you got to do. You got to do.
It simultaneously, but we're just not getting bites. So we've asked all the big guys, all the consultants, please help us, and they're struggling too. So.
Well, and retention is important as well because, you know, I think making sure that we can ensure that the people that we have are retained is an important factor. So we talked at a previous meeting about the way that you can potentially look at some of the really critical, unique positions, and I'd be interested in you just making sure you're following up on that. Right, because I mean, I think some of the people now have very unique skills, and their retention is important to the program.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
So as we look to fill these critical hookahs, which unfortunately is getting, the hookah is getting larger and larger, because I think in their September report, we only had 41 that were actually filled. So at some point, it's going to be sort of like the law of diminishing returns, because as they look at the potential for heart, and they see basically a 30-31 stop date, because for us to do anything else, we probably have to go through this whole process again. So they may not see themselves as having an opportunity to the future. So I guess what I was trying to figure out is, at what point do we have a real problem in that you will not be able to recruit locally? Because the question is going to be logically, and I'm sure this is something that even Nate has thought about, and Corey and everyone else, is that, okay, at what point is it that Hart isn't going to offer them an immediate employment in the future? So that's what I kind of want to know, because there's no use banging our heads if we don't have an answer that we're going to be able to plan, because planning is one thing, construction is another thing. So at what point are we're just not going to recruit, because people are not going to relocate to Hawaii because they don't see a future, or people may not take these positions because they don't see a future.
No, you're absolutely right, Chair. If we don't merge, we folks have talked about it as a board, if we don't merge DTS and HART, there is no longevity. So the odds of hiring a city person for rail diminishes. And so towards the end, we're going to have to rely more and more on the consultants, because the consultants know, the consultant staff know, HART ends, that's okay. They'll just go on to the next project.
Exactly.
So you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate, but unless that merger or something happens, it's going to be an issue.
And this goes back to something, Anthony, you and I have discussed, and so has Roger's not here. That is, you know, is there a need, and totally unrelated to this, but is there a need to, when you look at Article 17 of the Charter, it's a public transit authority. So does that kick that up so that everything merges into there, and then we have more of a job opportunity when everything falls under Article 17? But anyway.
Of course, Roger's preference is for not to merge HART into the city, but for the DTS to join HART as a semi-autonomous.
And that's Article 17.
Right.
Article 17 is not technically part. It is a public transit authority. But anyway, I feel that at some point you're just, you know, we're going to be here saying, why is the hookah growing? And it's going to grow. It doesn't look like we're going the other way. So we got to figure out at what point we're just not going to be successful. But anyway, thank you. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Any other question? Okay, if there's no questions, that is the last item on the agenda. I want to wish everybody happy holidays, and we are adjourned.
Hey, we have one more meeting.
She gotta go turn on the Christmas lights now.